Hey, all my IFG friends, this is Steve. I want to say, if you like movies like I do, we've started a new podcast called Happy Hour Flicks. You can find it anywhere podcasts are found. It's all about nostalgic movies that we love, and we bring on special guests each episode, and we also have specialty cocktails made for each one, too. So it really is an hour of a good time talking about movies that we love, like Gremlins, Seven, Free Willy. We talk about The Last Starfighter also. I mean, we kind of run the gamut across all the decades and really have a great time. So wanted to invite you to come over and join us. That's Happy Hour Flicks, anywhere podcasts are found.
Well, Close Encounters was huge, and it took about 2 or 3 weeks for Spielberg to even let me touch a camera. But one day he came to me and said, all right, we're doing this party scene in the backyard. Take a camera out and show me what you can do.
This is the
Independent
Filmmaker's Guide
from Framework Productions.
Framework
Productions.
On IFG, we talk about independent film from development through delivery. By featuring discussions with creators and collaborators about their experiences, we form a roadmap to help you have the most success with your projects. With a career spanning more than 50 years, he's been the cinematographer on over 70 films and TV episodes, including the cult classic Donnie Darko. With us today, cinematographer Steven Poster A.S.C.
It's different every time. Every director works differently. And the ones that I appreciate the most will direct me as though I'm an actor. I want to be directed as a cinematographer. I feel the camera becomes a character in any movie.
That's Steven Poster, cinematographer. He shot films for directors like Mel Brooks, Rob Minkoff, Ridley Scott, just to name a few. I'm your host, Stephen Pierce. Tell me about how you got started initially, right? You were born and raised in Chicago, and you started in still photography.
Well, I started in still photography when I was very young, when I was about 10 years old. And by the time I was 12, somehow I knew that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know whether they were talking about bar mitzvahs and weddings, news, school portraits, the things that we come in contact with all the time for photography. But when I was 14, I was sitting in my living room one day looking out at the street, and an old Jaguar drove up, and a guy got out. He was wearing a cap, he was smoking a pipe, and he had a light meter on his belt. And I ran outside and I said, "Hi, I'm Steve. I live next door here. What kind of light meter is that?" And he said, "Son, we'll have a lot of time to talk about that. I'm building a house next door to you." And he was a newsreel cinematographer. Maury Bleckman was his name. He was a CBS news cameraman in Chicago, and he owned, also was one of the owners of the 16 millimeter news lab. And he became my mentor. And the day I met him, I thought he was the coolest human being I'd ever seen. And I said, that's what I want to do. I love movies, I love photography. I had no idea that they could be combined. And from that point on, what I wanted to do was be a cinematographer.
And
even
now
though
the
I didn't
reports
quite
of you
know what that meant.
Now all the reports of you showing up everywhere in a Jaguar with a light meter on your hip, that does all make sense now. Now I get where they're coming from.
Yeah. And the beard and the pipe. For years I smoked the pipe until it became unpopular.
How did you get into narrative films? You started in commercials, right? More in documentary commercial world?
Industrials, documentaries, educational films, shorts, just anything and commercials. I mean, that anything I could put film through a camera at that point. And I got paid for it too, on top of it, which was very exciting. Actually, sometimes I didn't get paid for it, and sometimes I was stiffed. But those are the things you learn in business coming up. But my concentration all through college was still photography, because there wasn't that much availability of cinematography education. So I started out at Southern Illinois University, and they had a photography department, which happened to be combined with printing management. So in our photography studios, we had lithograph printers, and it was kind of an industrial education. I finally got out of there and went to Art Center, where I now teach, and I was there for a couple of years, and finished up at the Institute of Design, which was the American Bauhaus in Chicago, all with the idea of design. Design was the background, and cinematography was the foreground, and photography was the foreground. So I came out of that, and in my senior year at IIT, I got a job. I went into a commercial company for a job as an assistant, and they looked at a little film that I had shot in college, and they said, "Well, you know how to light." And I said, "Well, yeah, I do know how to light." And they said, "We're going to hire you as a cameraman." I said, "Okay, I'm a cameraman." And that was it. And I just never looked back from there. I did a couple of assisting jobs and realized I was not a good assistant. So I stayed with being the cinematographer. And I just built up my career to the point where I started getting shorts to shoot. I actually produced and directed a short that won the Atlanta Film Festival for Best Short in the festival, and realized that I wanted to do narrative work, and that's where I was headed all along. I got in the union after about 5 years in shooting in Chicago, and was able to get on certain productions as a camera operator. And it was just building on that until I got a job working for the inventor of gore films, Herschel Gordon Lewis, Monster, Go-Go, Blast Off Girls, grade Z motion pictures, but we were making movies. He could make an entire color feature film for $25,000. Go figure that one out in those days. And we made, one summer, we made 3 movies. And so that was my first official work in cinematography, in narrative cinematography. It was pretty exciting times until I started getting more union work and started. I moved to California, and it took a few years to get my union certification out here. But once I did, I was given a TV show to shoot called Class of '65, and I was on that till the series ended, and went on to do TV movies, and from there got my first feature, a big time horror film called Blood Beach. And from
Sounds
Blood Beach,
great. Blood Beach, the title.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I got to go dig that one out.
It was after Jaws, and the catchphrase was, now that you're not afraid to go in the water, you can't even get across the beach. And it was a monster that lived under the sand and sucked people under and ate them.
It sounds like it's prime for a reboot.
It was fun. It was, and then from there I went to Dead and Buried, which was a very early zombie movie. It was zombie. and then just kept building and building on that till I got to the things that sort of made my career, like being second unit director of photography on Close Encounters.
Exactly. I was about to say, I mean, you've got some major titles that have come up in your career here, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You also worked on Blade Runner. So what were those? I mean, that had to have been very exciting to be a young person to be able to work on. I mean, at that point, nobody knew what they were, like they were just another film, right? So what was it like to work on those?
Well, Close Encounters was huge. I mean, it was For me, I was hired as in those days when a film went into a territory like the Chicago territory or the central territory in the country, they have to have people from the union there. There were 3 different unions before we merged. And so Vilmos hired me to do Close Encounters. I got there and I was like the Chicago standby cameraman. And it took about 2 or 3 weeks for Spielberg to even let me touch a camera. But one day he came to me and said, all right, we're doing this party scene in the backyard. Take a camera out and show me what you can do. And so I spent the day photographing kind of background stuff in this backyard party scene. And Spielberg saw the dailies. It was on a Wednesday, so he saw the dailies on Friday. On Sunday, I got a call to come to his editing room. I thought I was being fired. I had no idea what was going on. And he looked up from the editing bench and said to me, all right, I got these 5 shots I want you to do next week, second unit. He said, go tell, here's what they are. Go tell Julia Phillips, the producer, tomorrow morning on Monday, what you're going to do. Little did I know that was a setup for me to tell Julia Phillips that they really needed a second unit.
So you kind of got thrown into the fire.
I got thrown in big time. And after about 40 minutes of Julia screaming at me, that I have no authority to, who told you, what is it? And then she finally said, okay, do it, but go tell Clark Palou, the production manager. So I had to do it all over again and tell him that he was going to spend money on a second unit. And that was it for the rest of the show. I was doing, every week, I was doing a series of shots for Steven. I was also operating the camera on some of it. So it was, for me, in fact, I had such an education on that movie. The gaffer, who was one of these old Hollywood generals in a white short sleeve white shirt, never got dirty, stood there like this, and he had about a crew of probably 75 to 100 people working on it. It was that big. He said, kid, if you're going to grow up to be a director of photography, he said, get up there and learn how to run an arc. So for 3 days, I went up to what's called the perms, the top of the set, where we had 40 arcs spread out, and it was a great experience working up there with the guys that you never see, that are up in the up there in the high place where they go up in the morning and they come down in the day at night, and you never see them. But they're running the arcs, and I learned how to trim and service an arc, and it was an amazing experience.
That sounds like an amazing experience, especially to be so young and get thrown into the fire like that and then succeed. Had to feel great.
Oh, it was wonderful, and so it gave me a lot of opportunity to meet people and to experience the type of production that almost nobody ever gets to experience anymore.
Right. Those just massive kind of films.
Yeah. And it was the first time I worked with Doug Trumbull, who was a genius master at visual effects. This is well before digital. So
what was it like? Was it a similar experience with getting on Blade Runner?
Blade Runner was interesting because I was brought in for one night to do something that Ridley had done that 2 other DPs had attempted, and he still wasn't satisfied with it. He was fighting with the studio, and they said, I need this done differently. And I got there, and what it was the shot of Decker's car, the spinner, driving through the tunnel with the reflections on the ceiling, and the white tile tunnel, which is the 2nd Street tunnel here in LA, downtown. And the studio said, we've done this 2 times before. He didn't like it. You can't have any lighting. You can't do anything. Just get out there with a camera and a water truck, because it was very hot and we needed to wet down for reflections. Said, get out there and do whatever you can. And I had no idea what had been done before. I was not told anything. I went out, I had a car, I had a tunnel, I had a camera, and a water truck. And so without any lights, I didn't know quite what to do. I took, I had the crew and all the trucks that we had with us go to the other side of the tunnel and put their brights on and shine it into the tunnel to get some kind of value back there. And I put the camera on a sandbag, let the car drive by a few times, did a couple other shots, and it's exactly what Ridley wanted. I had no idea. What I found out was that the other 2 guys who had done it were putting the camera up higher and looking down. I'm a short guy. I got down on a sandbag and on my hands and knees and did it that way, and he liked that. And so he kept me around for the rest of the show. It was about 4 weeks. And every day we would come in and do something while the visual effects were being done. They would be doing 2-3 shots a day. And Ridley and I would go off to a stage and do an entire scene. I did the scene in the dressing room with Joanna Cassidy when the snake lady, when she beat up Harrison Ford and then runs out and gets shot and dives through the window. And I was constantly doing stuff like that. Daryl Hannah Priss, when she did her flip and put her hand in the boiling water, that was all me, things like that. So
do you approach, I mean, what was it like, the set, like the instruments I assume you're using back then? Are you shooting all that on stage, right? There wasn't anything on location. Yeah. So I assume that's a pretty big like build and construction. It takes days to assemble these big sets, and you're using huge tungsten lights, right?
Huge. Well, we're tungsten and arcs. HMIs didn't exist at that time. So we were doing, and it was 35 millimeters, so it wasn't extraordinary. It wasn't 65 or anything like that. But it's a different scale. We were, I did another movie with Ridley. I was the director of photography on, called Someone to Watch Over Me, which was his experiment in lower budget filmmaking. It was, as opposed to 50 million or 100 million, it was 13 million. So it was right. It was a little bit different scale.
It was a real tiny micro indie.
Exactly. And we were on the set over at Warner Brothers, and we walked by the area that he had built the street for Blade Runner, and we were walking to one of the stages that we had, and he said, the entire art department for this movie, Someone to Watch Over Me, is less money than it took to just clean up the set after we were done shooting. So that's the difference in scale from what we did. But Someone to Watch Over Me is a terrific movie. I'm very proud of it.
So whenever you approach, like whenever you're starting to work with a director in the very beginning stages, and you just come, well, let's even start before that. What appeals to you as a cinematographer? Like, how do you choose a project to work on?
You got something to shoot, I'll shoot it for you. we're freelance, we see the scripts and decide if it's, and meet the people and decide if it's going to be a compatible situation that I can get some creative chops out of. I've got one now, and I did Donnie Darko. Okay, everybody said, why did you do Donnie Darko after the big movies that you had done? And it was because I read the script, and the script was fantastic. And I said, I really want to do this movie. And I met with Richard and Sean, the producer, and I said, I really like the script. I think the script's terrific. I want to do this movie with you, but I will only do it if Richard and I can spend 4 or 5 days alone together, learning about what it is we want to shoot. And they gave me those 4 days. We did it in 4 days, and we read the script word for word to each other, and we made each other justify what we wanted to see on the screen. My constant question to any director is, what are you telling the audience with this shot? What is the purpose of this shot narratively? And that's a question that if they can't answer, then you're in trouble. but when you sit down and break down a script on that level, where you are going through it word for word, scene by scene, beat for beat, you begin to understand the bones of the script in a way that you are telling a story, and I'm telling a story visually, in a way that relates to the script, relates to the page, and also allows the actors the freedom to tell the story, because we're not trying to figure out what we're shooting. We know every day what we need to shoot to make it a successful day.
So whenever you're approaching that, how much classically in your relationships with director have they brought you what they're like, a very strong creative visual plan, and how often have you brought it and they wanted to manage more performance and storytelling?
It's different every time. Every director works differently, and the ones that I appreciate the most are the directors that will direct me as though I'm an actor. You know, I want to be directed as a cinematographer. I feel the camera becomes a character in any movie.
I've been saying that for years. I'm glad to hear you say that.
I
thought it's, I think it absolutely is. Like, it's, I come from a theatrical background. I studied theater in college, and I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Missouri. So all we had was theater. Anyway, I went to a theater conservatory in Webster. And the reason I'd done that is I think that storytelling was more universal, and I didn't know much about film at all. But I was like, this medium's only been around for 100 years, maybe at that point, So I was like, I want to go for storytelling, and that's really what I want to focus on. And I always thought that what was really appealing to me as I get older is about filmmaking is you get to have an influence as a director and as a cinematographer into the image and the mood and the impact. Whereas in theater, you're more like building, pushing a stone up a hill, up a mountain. You're pushing and pushing and pushing. And by the time you get to the top, you should be able to push it, and it runs by itself.
Yeah.
So, I've always thought that was the whole appeal of the medium.
Mm-hmm. No, so, I think you're right.
So you've had quite a diverse career, starting first, you're doing second unit on, things like Blade Runner. And then you get into a whole DP career, cinematographer career of your own. Like, for instance, like here's a kind of an odd one that I pulled just in the scope is like Strange Brew from 1983.
Love that movie.
So our producer Matt Mundy, who produces this, he's obsessed with that movie. He said he used to go rent it from Blockbuster all the time. What was it like filming that?
4 months of laughter. So it was one of the most delightful productions I'd ever been on. It was so much fun working up there. Bob and Doug, Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas were just so creative and so funny, and and it was such a light and free atmosphere. Max von Sydow doing a comedy, can you imagine? Paul Dooley, all the cast was fun. They were the two of them. It was like working with 6 different people, or maybe 8 different people, because you had the 2 people were the writers, the directors, the producers, and the stars, and you never knew quite which one you were talking to at any given point. But
so Donnie Darko is like super moody, very gritty, love the look, very all about shape and like shadow. Strange Brew, not the same. it's a comedy. Construction's different. The lighting's different. How do you approach the genre comedy different than drama, or is it film by film, or is there a difference?
No, it's really film by film and director by director and actor by actor. It's no two are the same ever. In fact, I've done 3 movies with Richard Kelly. All 3 are completely different experiences, and they were all fun. They were all lots of fun and lots of hard work, because Richard is very demanding, and he always wants to do more than his budget can afford. I'd like to say his eyes are bigger than his stomach. Did your mother ever say that to you?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So, but each one is different. I tell you, with Strange Brew, they gave me so much freedom because they were just so, they had never done this before, and they really collaborated with me in every possible way, and it was. To this day, it's a classic. I watched it not so long ago, and of course, you realize that the 2 astronauts that just flew the SpaceX rocket were Bob and Doug.
Yeah, I recognized the name. I thought of that as soon as you said the name. Mentioned them.
I know. So
are there any? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I mean, it's just you. Every film has what I want to call a gestalt, a kind of sphere, and within that sphere there are different spheres that all interact with each other, and something up here can have one action that it'll affect something down here. Everything is connected within a production, and you begin to understand what the structure is that you're working within, and what this particular gestalt of humans and interacting with other humans is, and it's each one's different. There's no 2 that have ever been alike.
On a typical indie film that you've done, how much prep are you doing, and how do you dissect your prep?
Well, it depends. I've done as little as 4 days on a movie, which is not enough.
You found successful? Do you think
yes.
it was success?
Yes, wow. yes. And I've done as much as 10 weeks prep.
Wow.
With Richard Kelly, Richard and I do a lot of work in prep, and I like to be around to help him hire the right crew and people that he wants to work with, shape the production as much as possible, because it's a family affair with Richard, and you really want to have a certain amount of watchful control over everything. So I do a lot of prep with Richard, and that's the way he likes it. Some movies you come on late. There was a movie that I got taking out the garbage. How about that? I was living up here in Laurel Canyon, and I just gotten back from Strange Brew, and was taking out my garbage, and I saw my neighbor, and I said, I knew he was a producer, and I said, "Hi, what are you doing?" And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I just got back from Canada shooting this very funny movie." And he said, "Well, I'm doing this little anti-nuclear film." I said, "Really? Oh, I'd love to read the script." He said, "Well, we already have a DP." I said, No, I just want to see what you're doing. It sounds great." And he gave me a script, and I read it, and he gave it back to him the next day. And I said, "Jonathan, this is fabulous. Whatever I can help with, this is an important movie, and whatever I can help with, I will be glad to help." And he said, "Well, we already have a cameraman." 2 days later, he said, "Our cameraman quit, and we're starting to shoot in 4 days." And I said, "I'll do it." And he said, "Well, I don't have a lot of money." And I said, "I'll do it for free." Because it was 21 days of my life. And it was fantastic. To this day, it's one of the most chilling movies I've ever seen on an anti-nuclear subject. It's called Testament. You should see it. It's about a town that doesn't suffer any of the blast damage in a nuclear war, but it gets the radiation, and people start dying, and the town starts dying. It's just, Jane Alexander stars in it, and she's amazing. Lynn Littman was the director, and it's a classic, and it's an important movie. It's probably one of the most beautiful and important movies I've ever done in 21 days, and with $700,000 budget. So it's not the amount of money you have, it's not the amount of time you have, it's the amount of heart you put into a project, and it's your heart and your soul. If you're telling that story, that's that important. That's the focus.
That's amazing. It's so inspiring to like hear, you know what I mean, to talk about different scopes of projects, that you can do something very quickly that still can be very impactful. That the story really does come down to being the key part, not the technical elements. It's the story. It
really is. Hey, listen, I prepped a Mel Brooks movie in 4 days.
No way. All right, so let's hear about that. I feel like, Steven, every time you open your mouth, I'm like about to ask another question, and then you just casually drop like that one time I prepped Mel Brooks movie in 4 days.
Yeah, well, it was what happened was a friend of mine worked for him as one of his writers, and I got home on a Sunday from a location, a commercial location. And I got a call from my friend Steven, who said, "Would you like to shoot a Mel Brooks movie?" And I said, all my life, Mel Brooks, since I was 12 years old, since the 2000-Year-Old Man came out, I've been a Mel Brooks fan. I've always wanted to work for him. And in fact, when I came out to Art Center to go to school, I found out Mel Brooks's address, and I went to his house, and I put an envelope with a letter in his mailbox saying, "I will sweep the floors. I will do anything." I mean, I was a huge Mel Brooks fan. And I actually did get a letter back thanking me and saying, no, there was nothing at the moment. But here was my opportunity. And I said, yeah, I want to shoot him. He said, well, we're starting to shoot next week, and want you to read the script. So they dropped the script off at the house Sunday night. I read it. Monday morning, I called my friend and I said, yes, I'm ready. I want to meet with Mel. And that afternoon, I came in to the office, and Mel was there with his producer and the two writers, and we had a discussion. And I had just gotten off of shortly before that Rocky V, which was a horrendous, horrible experience for me. And it was not going to work that summer. I was going to take the summer off. But here was Mel Brooks, and I said to him, I said, Mel, I really want to do this movie with you. I really want to work with you, but you got to make a deal. And he said, what's that? And I said, I know from all my cameraman friends that have worked for you that you yell and scream at cameramen. He said, yeah, I do. He said, I said, you're allowed to yell and scream at me, but you got to be nice. And he turned to his guys and says, I can do that. And we finished the conversation. And he said, I'll call you later. So I got home about 6 o'clock in the evening. He called me up and he said, we want you to come in tomorrow and spend the day with us scouting, because we want to check out to see if you're a prima donna or not. And I screamed into the phone, I'm not a prima donna. And he turned to whoever was in the room and says, he says he's not a prima donna. And I came in, we scouted, and that was it. It was love. It was absolute love. And I just,
That's Life Stinks, right? The movie?
Life Stinks. Every single day he would come in the morning and get in my face and start screaming at me. You don't know anything about comedy. You're costing me millions of dollars. And I would stand there and laugh. It was a 2,000-year-old man yelling at me. How could I take it seriously? And halfway through the movie, he came to me and said, Stephen, you're doing a good job. I want you to know that. But I come in and I yell at you every morning. But I want you to know, I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at them. But you can take it. They can't.
That's fantastic. That had to be like a bright spot from sending an envelope and being like, I'll sweep your floors, to being like, you're the guy I'm gonna yell at. You basically ended up doing it.
To this day, I see him socially, and he's just wonderful. Just wonderful. Yeah.
So how was that transition from film to digital for you, and do you think that it opened any doors for you?
Well, I'm going to say this publicly. Don't tell anybody. But I'm one of the few cameramen that is not nostalgic about film. I really feel that we have been given the tools and the opportunity to do things visually that we never were able to do before. And I think that's an important concept, because if you just say it was so much better on film, you're missing out on a whole world of opportunity. So yeah, I love film. If somebody would pay me to shoot film, I'd love to do it again. It's fun. It's a different medium. But I got very involved in the transition to digital from around 1990 on. I was brought in to shoot an experimental program for Sony and NHK and Panavision on how to see if their camera that they put together could be used to do narrative work. And from that point on, I became very involved in the transition to digital, to the point at which, when I was president of the A.S.C., I started the technology committee, because I knew that we needed to be involved on a different level at the A.S.C. in this transition, or we would lose it. And it's now called the MyTech Committee, Motion Imaging and Technology Committee and Council. And but it's gone on all these years that this little committee that I started to do very, very important things.
So what is it like? How did your induction into the A.S.C.? I'll admit, I actually don't know a lot about the A.S.C. I just know that those letters mean a lot. So what was your experience with it? And then obviously I'd love to know your overall thoughts about it as a former president.
The A.S.C. is a wonderful organization. It's a fraternal organization. It is progress, loyalty, and artistry embodied in a group of members becoming more diverse. I have to tell you, we are definitely becoming more diverse. For a long time, it was an old white boys club, but over the last 10 years, things have changed there. And it's an organization of about 300 members, 300 active members, 300, 350, somewhere around there. Around the world, we have members from China and Australia and New Zealand and Tibet, and all over the world. But it's a group of now very enthusiastic members who want to get involved to make our art and our craft better. It's no longer just a drinking club. But when I got in the old days, I think I got in 1984, just before Someone to Watch Over Me came out. And it was my meeting to get in was 3 of the older DPs taking me to lunch, and these were the guys that smoked cigars that were about that big, and talking about cinematography. And that was my entrance into the A.S.C. Once they approved of me, I became a member and got deeply involved with them and became president at one point. I'm now on the board still. I'm back on the board because I left the board because I was president of the Cinematographers Guild, and it was just too much to be on that one as well. But I'm back on the board now, and we've got a terrific board and a fantastic president, and it's a group. I see more action, more involvement of members, and the younger members especially in the ASC that want to do the best they can for the art craft of cinematography. So I'm very proud of the ASC right now. It's a wonderful group and a very active group of members who want to give back.
I'm going to ask you, like, now kind of moving over to a couple other, like, logistical side of indie film, if you don't mind. Like, what do you usually, whenever you approach an independent film, I know it depends upon the budget, but what are you looking for in a crew size? Like, what do you feel like is the minimum you can do your job effectively?
It depends on the film. I mean, it's hard to say. The thing that I'm good at doing is scaling to the production. If it's a tiny film, which are some great films now, it's not like you need a huge budget to tell a good story. You scale to the size of the budget, and you scale the work to the size of the budget. You know, a writer writes, you know, the old joke is eighth of a page, the Romans take the city. You know? So you know, you can write in a few words a humongous scene, but if it's a script that's well thought out for the level of production that it is, then you can manage with a smaller crew. And one of the great advantage is the ability to shoot in higher ISOs, faster, more sensitive sensors. I'm a big fan right now of the Canon cameras for a couple of reasons. The chips that they use are a different. In the sense that the two ways they're different than any other company. When you change the ISO, when you increase the ISO, they increase the volume, the voltage to the chip. So it's actually like getting a new chip. So what you have when I shoot all of my night interiors and exteriors at 3200 ISO. That's unheard of.
Right. Yeah, that's
in
usually
film.
Very noisy and very, yeah.
Not on this camera, because the other thing that they do is they fire all their photo sites randomly, so that nothing looks like a fixed pattern. Nothing looks like fixed noise. It looks like film grain. And at 3200, you hardly see any. It's very clean. So when I can take a strip of 6 light gear bulbs, tape them up to a wall, and put a 12-volt battery on it, and have a key light. I mean, it's
LED lights are. I mean, I think
remarkable.
over the last 5 years, even. I mean, they've really, with the introduction of light gear, you know, and sky panels. I mean, there are many companies making good stuff, but those are just top notch. And also, I mean, the Gemini you have to throw in there also.
KinoFlow as well. KinoFlow has some fabulous stuff.
You know, they were a little late to get to the LED game, but whenever they did get there, they made it all the way, I think. Yeah. I mean, there are so many great brands. They're all very expensive, but I mean, light tile, the fact that you can take paper thin things and tape it to a wall.
Yeah.
And run it off of a battery is, and it is a great light. Like, it is a great quality of light.
Yes.
Is insane.
And have complete control over it with DMX and the ability to sit there at a board and completely relight your set is fabulous. I'm working with I'm on another board of a for-profit company, actually, out of Baylor University, one of the problems with exhibition with digital now is that the way the three primaries are spiked, somebody can look at a color standing next to somebody else looking at the same color, and they'll see two different colors. It's called metamerism, and that's a problem that exists in physics. It's not something that can be controlled, except that this company called 6P is we have patented systems to fix that. So and it's completely backwards compatible with everything. So it fits within ACES. It fits within 2020. It fits within any of the color systems that exist today, and it's a way to solve that problem. So we're probably going to introduce it at either the virtual SMPTE or Hollywood Post Alliance retreat in the spring. But that's pretty exciting because we're fixing a problem that exists primarily because of three spiky primaries. We have six. We have six, and they're bigger.
Where do you fall on the lens choice debate? Do you think that it is all about picking the vintage lens and that's, or the lens is the character that the cinematographer gets? Or do you think that clean lenses are basically so the same now that it doesn't matter?
Everything's different. Every piece of glass is different. Now, I believe that you take a good set of lenses, the characteristic of which you've tested and you understand, and you take a diffusion filter and put it in front of that lens and create a look based on the story that you're telling. I'm a big believer in diffusion. I don't think I have ever shot anything without some diffusion on it, film or digital. And in fact, I helped develop a filter called the pearlescent filters from Tiffin. I've got a new line of filters that I'm developing now, which will also help with the fact that we're probably not going to be allowed to use smoke or atmosphere on a set. And these filters will help it. I believe in bending the light rays before they hit the glass. So you can say, well, we could do that in post. No, you can't. I think it's a different quality. Once you affect the light rays hitting the glass, hitting the sensor, then that's what's important. And you can take a beautiful set of Cooks. You can take the Panavision Primos or the Panavision or the large format lenses. You can take the Ingenues. You can take Zeiss Master Primes, and they're wonderful lenses. Every company has some wonderful lenses, but I was talking to Russell Carpenter, who's just starting to work on Avatar at the moment, and he said that they found a set of cheap lenses. He didn't give me the name of them, but I want to get those names. He said they're every bit as good as a lens that costs $40,000. And so but what you need is a matched set. Once you have a matched set that will give you the same visual, emotional quality to an image, then you are on the way of creating a style for that production.
Lastly, what advice would you give to young cinematographers now, people that are just starting out or just maybe getting into their first feature now? What would you tell them?
It's the importance of being the set leader. is almost as important as the quality of work you produce. It's so easy to get into a contentious set and have a miserable time. It's just as easy for the director of photography to be the cheerleader on the set and be the person running the set in a benevolent and safe way, as opposed to being a miserable bastard. You know, it runs. I don't care who you are, how uptight you are, or whatever. If you're not considerate of the people around you, and if you're not enthusiastic about the work, you're not going to get as good a product. Period.
Great. I think that's fantastic advice. Well, Steven, I could talk to you for hours. So thank you very much for taking the time, and look forward to the next time we get to chat.
This is a real pleasure. You guys are great. I appreciate it. And I'll be talking to you soon.
There are so many great stories and lessons and all the things from this guy's career.
I love the fact where he was like, yeah, I shot this one thing. Steven Spielberg just said, get out there in this backyard with the camera. Let's see what you can do.
Yeah, or Mel Brooks wants to call him, prima donna, or Ridley.
My favorite quote was, I think from the Mel Brooks stuff, it's like, I'm yelling at you because you can take it. I'm yelling at them, not you, but you can take it or whatever.
I will say this is going to be a longer episode than most of our episodes, but we couldn't stop because there is so much great stories and history there. I mean, when you have a guy like that who's been working for this long, through the 70s all the way to today, in a variety of genres and styles of film, there's just so much to draw from.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to him before, and I mean, we didn't even get into the animation stuff he's done. He's shot like Stuart Little too, which is a whole fascinating process in and of itself. I mean, there's just, honestly, he's a guy that he's super easy to talk to. He's very, very genuine, and he's in his mid-70s and cares. Like, this guy's not phoning it in. You can tell. I mean, he was the president of the International Cinematographers Guild till I think last year. So I mean, this man is actively working and hungry and going. And that's, I think, maybe my biggest takeaway, man. Like, cause he's like, I was like, what's appealing to you to shoot a film? What did he say?
If you got something to shoot, I'll shoot it.
Yeah. I mean, we talk to people who are in their 20s who are burned out more than this guy. So that's really a testament.
Right. And, and that's how he got involved in some of these, smaller indie features, like something like Donnie Darko, for instance. At that point in his career, a lot of people wouldn't even be, reaching to or stepping to that level to do a smaller indie feature. But he said, I'll do it. I just want to make sure we're going to do the director's vision.
Yeah. How many times have we heard a DP say, it's all about the script, which is, you would think the one person to be like, yes, but the visuals. And it really comes down to everyone is after that story. Like, it is all about the story.
Another thing that I love that he said is that he specifically likes to be directed like an actor.
Interesting,
and he sees
right?
The camera as a character.
I use that phrase. I love that idea because I think that the camera operator too, like, they have to interpret the scene visually. They are in the scene. So that was just so awesome to hear.
So I guess the takeaway sounds like, don't necessarily be afraid to approach people who are of a certain level and way more experienced than you are, because, look at, for the director of Donnie Darko, for instance, they ended up having, now they make movies together all the time, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's just, don't forget why you do it. You gotta love it. You gotta want to do it. And don't forget that, because that's the most key component.
Well, I think we're going to have him on again. Filmmaking is a collaborative experience, and so is this podcast. Follow us on Instagram at framework_productions for upcoming episode announcements, and leave your questions in the comments for our future guests. Please take a second to subscribe so you know about future episodes, and leave a review. It really does help us. IFG is a community, and we want to help you in your filmmaking process.
Hi, I'm Stephen Hicken, a cinematographer from Brooklyn, and I'm reading the credits. IFG is created by Framework Productions and directed by James Allerdyce. It's produced by Matt Mundy, edited by Audrey McHale, and hosted by Stephen Pierce. The music is by Glass Boy. Find this music on freemusicarchive.org. See and listen to all the episodes plus bonus content at theindependentfilmmakersguide.com. Thanks for listening.
Hey friends, we just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about two personal things. First, we wanted to thank you, our listening community, and our wonderful guests, learning so much together along the way and continuing to learn, sharing our stories, making a lot of new friends, and collaborating, which is exactly what this is all about. Which also brings me to my second point. In great part to many of these new relationships, we wanted to let you know that we've taken a lot of this advice ourselves and made our own narrative feature film, Herd. H-E-R-D, Herd, which is premiering this October on Friday the 13th in select theaters as well as on VOD. Personally, I think it's the perfect kind of scary movie to watch during our favorite scary season. So we'd love for you to celebrate with us and watch Herd. You can pre-order it on Apple TV and, of course, do the communal thing, see it in theaters. Of course, for all of this, please see our show notes, but basically, we're going to keep it all updated at herd.film. That's herd.film, herd.film as well. Thank you again. And be sure to give us a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts so we can continue to build this community and collaborate. IFG, how movies get made.